everybody, and welcome to this February 24th City Council meeting. Thank you all for coming, and we are going to open this meeting first with committee reports of items of interest, and I am happy to form a queue. I know that Emily has something. I do. Anybody else need to be in the queue on committee reports? Betty? Okay.
We'll see.
All right. I'm going to actually start this myself because I want to extend an apology. I was interviewed by KVAL on last week about the Elkhorn Brewery decision by the city prosecutor, and I used my own words, and I really should have quoted the city prosecutor's language, which would have been more accurate. And his language was that after reviewing all the available evidence, I have conducted that the specific facts and circumstances of this incident do not give rise to a criminal charge that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And therefore, the city prosecutor's office will not file charges at this time. And I should have used that language exactly. The language I used was not accurate. And I don't want people to misconstrue my intention to imply that I thought that the protest was either fair or appropriate. And I'm recognizing that Elkhorn Brewery in particular has really been hit kind of 4 times, twice by vandalism, then by a very disruptive protest, and then with the city prosecutor's decision that said we can't file charges. So I appreciate the frustration and the anger that is felt by Eugene businesses, and I am committed to working with you to have a better conversation and find a productive path to move forward. So sorry that I did not make that clearer in that particular interview, and look forward to working with all of you in the future. And with that said, I will turn it over to Emily. Oh, Councilor Semple.
Yes, okay. Thank you. I had a little field trip this morning with Janina Rager, one of our community safety officers, and we went over to the West Side Church on Chambers and 18th. It's across from Bimart. And they have a little program going on there that we could emulate all over the city. There's about 7, 8 homeless people who sleep on their front porch. It's covered. It's the same group of people. They've been there long enough that when they get the people at the church get there, the sleepers clean up and they move on. And they've been working together. They each have a letter that they sign every month that says they have permission to sleep there, that they will come to a meeting every Tuesday, and they will put 2 to 3 hours in every Saturday doing community service in their area. They've been doing such a good job that one of the merchants has procured and paid for the porta potty for them. They have cleaned up so well that they have a key to the locked dumpster, and they all have keys to the porta potty they wear around their neck. They've done a power washing project. This weekend, they're hoping to get a donation of barker mulch, and they're going to clean out the bushes and shrubbery and put in barker mulch on all 4 corners of that intersection. We came inside and we all talked for a while, and I was just so happy to see different people working together. And it's taken some time. It's, build up some trust, reach out to the businesses, still working with the neighbors, but it's going really well. People have a place to sleep. They're getting a feeling of inclusion and value and ownership, and they're not having any impact on the neighborhood. It's safer because they're there. And I was just so impressed at what a low-cost solution. Yes, it didn't have, heat and laundry and showers, but they had a safe place to sleep, and they're valued. This is something that we could do all over. So I was really excited to have such an example of people working together. So I will monitor how they're going along, and I'll let you know. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Betty. Oh, Councilor Taylor, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, I want to correct an impression that came from Register Guard
editorial and a news article when they said that 4 councilors voted to put rental property on top of City Hall. That is not what we voted for. And to make sure that I was correct, I watched the entire webcast of that meeting, and I have the exact words of the motion that 4 people voted for, which was, the motion was, or voted against that, the motion was to build City Hall without additional floors. And 4 of us voted against that motion. We did not vote to build, we did not intend, some of us at least did not intend to have rental space. What we were thinking of was extra floors to put staff, where staff could have their offices, staff for whom we're presently paying rent in buildings all over downtown. So it's a real misconception to think that we voted to put extra floors for renting out. And I checked, I watched the whole meeting again just to be sure that I was right. Thank you.
Councilor Pryor.
Thank you, and thank you for your remarks, Mayor. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about my perspective on what happened at Elkhorn Tavern also. And I've had a chance to talk with a couple of folks in the police department and also get some perspectives. And while it's true, our current prosecutor didn't say there wasn't anything that went wrong. They just didn't feel that they could probably successfully prosecute it. And what that leads me to encourage us to do is to be much more clear in identifying behavior that is intimidating and or harassing, so that we can put in place those rules that we need to make sure that we can prosecute that behavior in the future. I want to be very explicit that I am not creating an inhibition on the content of what somebody may want to believe or may want to protest about. That is just like the sign code. You can put whatever you want to on the sign, but we need to regulate the manner in which it is carried out, displayed, or used. And so I'm focusing strictly on the behavior. If you wish to protest, that is great. If the behavior associated with that protest becomes intimidating or harassing or threatening, then that's another matter. And I think that is where we need some more clarity on the ordinances that would regulate that. Because I do not believe that harassment, intimidation, or threatening is okay, just as we do in this council chamber. We try to maintain a safe environment where it encourages all forms of expression. I've been through this twice now. I was on the city council when a previous city councilor had people invade his property and scare the bejesus out of him and his wife. They were scared, and that was not okay. And I think that was a mistake, and I think what happened at Elkhorn Tavern was a mistake. So if you wish to protest, if you wish to have a point of view different from mine, we welcome that. But we do not welcome behavior that is illegal or inappropriate. And whatever we need to do to put in place more clarity on our ordinances to make sure that that behavior is regulated, I believe we should encourage that.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, thank you for saying that. I agree entirely with everything you just said. And Mayor, I appreciate your words as well. Everything that I spoke about last week that made me angry was about people's behavior. It was about exactly what Councilor Pryor just said. It's not about status. It's not about condition. None of those things had anything to do with my comments either. It was entirely about behavior. And our code with regard to state, local, city criminal code and violation code is around behavior and not status, including the things that I suspect we're going to begin to talk about. And there are those that would like us to consider that they are about status and they are about behavior. Now, I'm no lawyer. I don't even play one on TV, much as I might enjoy that. But the way I read ORS 166.025, disturbing the peace, leads me to come to a different conclusion than our city prosecutor did. So I'm asking the city's manager and council, what is the appropriate role for a counselor who, having heard from several other lawyers in our community, and my simple, amateur reading of that statute, seems that it's clearly demonstrable in the video that I saw, as well as the several witnesses who were there, that there was a clear violation of 166.025, disturbing the peace. What's the right thing for a counselor to do who disagrees with the city prosecutor?
That's a really good question, and not a surprise, honestly, although I don't have any kind of a prepared statement because, as you know, there's hundreds of cases that are
Right.
prosecuted and not prosecuted by our prosecutor, by the DA, by others that lots of people have different ideas about. So when you start talking about what is a counselor's role in interpreting the law, I think that I almost just want to keep Catherine from even asking it because I don't know whether it's best for you to speak directly to Travis and get an
And I don't
understanding.
want to violate the fact that
Yeah.
he works for you. Forgive me for interrupting. I don't want to get around the appropriate role here, but I have an honest disagreement about that, and the judge is an inappropriate person to talk to, even though he works for all of us, and we could talk with about other things like that, not in this particular case. And I understand that, there are plenty of times when a police officer uses discretion around enforcement, and that's good, and that's helpful. But I would have thought this rose to at least the level of a violation that might warrant citing to some of those folks who were involved, rather than arrest.
So I'm going to say one more thing, and then if you want to weigh in, you can.
Okay.
So I also have met with Stephen and met at the Elkhorn the morning after the prosecutor. That was a coincidence. We had that meeting set up. Heard a lot about that story and assured him I would come back and review the police report, the police investigation, to make sure everything I heard from him
Right.
was actually in there. And also verified that he would be able to obtain a copy of that as a public record and have given him some instructions on how he can do that. The prosecutor makes that decision independently based on their history, based on case law, based on their experience. There's plenty of cases where Travis has prosecuted things that people thought maybe he shouldn't have, and there's other times like this one where he didn't. And as you know, none of us are, or we're not advising on that. He doesn't
Right.
call and say, "City manager, what do you think?" It's
And I
based
appreciate
on
the way you've handled
his
this. but-
integrity and ethics, and I trust that. It doesn't mean that anybody feels good about that.
And is there a role other than sit down and shut up, for a counselor who disagrees with that call?
You have an answer to that?
No, other than, Sarah touched on exactly what I was going to say, which is the prosecutor and similarly the DA make independent charging decisions. So, and my office, 25 plus years, has never spoken about what a charging decision should be. That is an independent role. And the only
Right.
reason I say that is because I've never been asked the question, what is the counselor's role? What I can say is there's never has been one. And because the prosecutor and the DA is expected to make independent charging decision, I don't see one for it. Because you want the person in that position to be making an independent
Yeah,
decision.
I do.
You do. And so when they look at the evidence and they do their analysis, no matter what, they are doing what is right in their analysis based on the facts and the law and the statute. And so that's why there's no really role for anyone
Right.
other than that person.
Well, I guess the only role that I know about is that I'm free to speak at this table in this microphone, and I disagree with him pretty pronouncedly, and I don't think that ended up being best for our community, making that decision. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any other counselors with comments? Manager, there you have.
Yeah, I'm changing subjects, so this will feel like we're all in that mood. I just wanted to follow up on an email we sent you. A couple of weeks ago, we had a group of students here from Period Eugene that had testified about wanting to take their work that they had done in the 4J district to get free menstrual products and restrooms to now public restrooms. Based on what happened after that, a number of you, in fact, all of you were kind of nodding your heads, we want more information about that. We did some research. We reached out to 4J, understood kind of what they're experiencing. They're also piloting this, I believe, at North Eugene High School. And just kind of reached out into our facilities to get a sense of what that would cost, and ultimately determined we could do a couple of pilots and then come back to you. So you were asking, like, should we do a poll for a work session? I don't think you need to do that, because right now what we're thinking is doing a pilot in the library. I believe the atrium is already kind of in the process of that. And then a couple of community centers where we already give things out if people ask us, but instead converting to machinery that would allow that to happen for free, and get a little bit of experience estimate so we can come back to you and say, hey, it's working and we can absorb that, or it's working and we need to adjust the budget. So that's kind of where we're at. It's kind of, we're just making it happen.
That's great. Thank you very much for pursuing that. I think it's a great asset to the community to step forward on that. All right. I think our first item, piece of business that we're going to take care of is the consent calendar. So can I have a motion?
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar 1.
Second?
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. None opposed. Thank you. And so now we are ready for the public forum. It looks like we have 16 people to testify. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light, and a beep indicate the end of 2 minutes. This is a piloting effort by council. We chose to make a couple of changes to our public forum process in an effort to make it more effective and equitable for everyone. So in addition to the shortened time to 2 minutes, well, this is not going to be an issue tonight, but we're reducing the overall time to 90 minutes, and we are shuffling the names of the speakers, so it's not first come, first serve. We've randomized that list. I'll read 2 names at a time. The first can come up and speak. The second can wait on deck for their turn, and that way we'll move through this quickly. And just a reminder that our goal is to have a safe place for public presentations here, so we ask for no outbursts at all. If you wish to show your approval, you can wave your fingers. And we also do not allow you to bring bags, briefcases, or backpacks to the testimony table or the speaker's podium. So with those simple rules, we will begin first with Kimberly Gladen, followed by Joe Staniak. Kimberly Gladen here?
Yep.
Yep, there she is. There she is.
Good evening. I came here because I've been hearing a lot about the 2021 Olympics coming and this fanfare that you're planning for the unbuilt area of the new downtown space. But what I haven't heard anything are your plans for the fanfare in this part of downtown. I mean, is there going to be a big screen TV in Kesey Square? Is there going to be a shuttle bringing people back and forth? How are you going to showcase all these businesses who have paid taxes all these years downtown and have had to put up with every one of your bad decisions? How are you going to bring the community and the group down there, which seems like you're putting it far away from us, over here? I've walked from Charnelton down to that area. It's a long walk. There's a lot of street barriers, railroad track barriers, and other barriers. People aren't going to move unless you do something to bring them here and showcase this area of downtown. I mean, you guys have let people deal drugs on our streets for 15 years. Openly deal drugs. These businesses have had to put up with every single group that has trashed the downtown, harassed the businesses, and they've had to clean up after it. I mean, I worked 11 years in a business downtown, and I picked up a lot of poop. How are you going to showcase Saturday Market and Farmers Market that have been here for 50 years? When I hear you're having a competing event with out-of-state crafters, out-of-town crafters down by the riverfront down there, do you really think that that's okay to leave everybody else out from what it sounds like? I want to hear what your plans are. I want to hear how you're going to showcase the people who have worked so hard to make this town something despite your bad decisions and this town going against them. I want to hear it. And I'm hoping that you will come up with a nice plan that will be good for everybody.
Thank you. Joe Staniak, followed by Kyra Elliott.
My name is Joe Staniak, and I live in Ward 7 within the Bethel community. One of the biggest concerns voiced by Bethel citizens is the lack of infrastructure within the community. More specifically, the absence of sidewalks and bike lanes in the majority of neighborhoods, lack of adequate street lighting, and minimal access to public transportation. It has been energizing, yet also discouraging, to see other areas of Eugene receive robust improvements and expansion to bike lanes and path access, yet we have not seen the same expansions in Bethel. According to a 2019 survey done by Beyond Toxics, 56 to 61% of Bethel residents travel more than 5 miles to work. With over 12,000 households in the Bethel area, that contributes a significant amount of traffic. If Bethel citizens had safe, accessible bike path routes to the main thoroughfares of town and stronger, more frequent bus routes to other areas of Eugene, we could help reduce traffic traveling to and from Bethel. Added traffic also contributes to safety concerns for those who bicycle or walk in the neighborhood, especially where sidewalks and bike lanes are absent. With 11 schools within the Bethel School District, it is critically important to prioritize the safety of students traveling to and from school by walking and biking. Because of the absence of sidewalks and adequate street lighting within our neighborhood, residents have high concerns for their safety when using non-vehicle transportation. The Beyond Toxic survey also reported that 40 to 45% of Bethel residents do not feel safe walking alone in their own neighborhood, compared to just 12% of other residents comparing the same feeling of safety in the rest of Eugene. As Envision Eugene includes Moving Ahead, a major transit project for the city, and identifies Highway 99 as one of the 5 key corridors for investment, I'm advocating for the council to prioritize transit and infrastructure investment in the Bethel area, as our community is sorely behind the rest of Eugene. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyra Elliott, followed by Jarl Berg.
Hello, my name is Kira Elliott, and I'm a senior of Churchill High School and the president of our Churchill's Feminist Union, and here today as a representative of the Eugene Period Movement. We were here tonight to remind you of the needs of menstruators in our city. Having free and easily accessible menstrual hygiene products should be a right to all people who need them, regardless of housing status, economic status, or gender. We thank you for your notes earlier regarding the pilots you've decided to implement, and we continue to urge you to pursue this and remind you that to menstruators, these hygiene products are the equivalent of other basic bathroom necessities, including toilet paper, as to non-menstruators. Periods are natural bodily functions, and many people rely on pads and tampons to handle their menstruation, which can be costly. A significant number of menstruators, especially those in Eugene, will not have routine access to pads and tampons and have to resort to using trash, cardboard, or other means to ease the bleeding. Menstruators have always needed free and easy access to pads and tampons, but we understand the concerns of possible vandalism, although please remember the City of Eugene Human Rights Code, which prohibits discrimination in public accommodations and facilities. We believe a lack of access to menstrual hygiene products could be discriminatory, as it impedes menstruators' daily lives, forces menstruators into period poverty, and limits the overall quality of living someone can have. It is evident that Period will continue to make known our goal and what we hope is a shared goal in improving the lives of people with periods. We hope you all, as Eugene City Council members, could recognize the apparent gender discrimination that roots period poverty, and we're really excited about all of your positive actions and reactions through, and are hopeful that the pilot run will be successful. We firmly believe this action is the next step in easing the lives of those who depend on public facilities and create positive social change in Eugene. Thank you.
Thank you. Jarl Berg, followed by Rowan.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to go quick because I have a few things I want to talk about. So when it comes to the homeless situation and what you guys are planning for building to support the homeless people who are low-income housing, all of that, I just want to remind you that I have to go to work every day and pay taxes. There should be some expectations of, if you're going to get a free home, there should be some expectation of actually taking classes to learn how do I get back on my feet so I don't need this housing anymore to open up that door for someone else to live there. So there needs to be some give and take there. It would be really great to see that as part of the process. Even classes maybe that are involved in the building itself that they are required to go to so that they, again, can get back on their feet again. So just consideration. City Hall. Right now we're sitting in a pretty awesome building right now and in a great space right here. So when it comes to City Hall and looking at what you're going to spend, there's not a lot of logic in spending $25–30 million on a building. There just isn't. So especially when we have much greater needs. So if there's a way, like the eWeb situation, if there's a way to get a building for next to nothing or fairly inexpensive, nothing's free. I get that, but it's my tax dollars too that have to pay for that. So, what can you do with, if you have like $16 million, what can you do if you only have to put a couple million into a building and then use the rest to help this really just dire situation that's going on in Eugene? It'd be pretty awesome, and it would be a shining example of your leadership to do that. So something to consider. Rent. Born and raised, almost my whole life working at my father's rental properties in the summer. Renters, there's a reason rent is so high, because renters are slobs. And that sounds horrible, but my experience says different. They are slobs. And so it costs a lot of money to own a rental property and to keep that property nice and not broken all the time, because they get broken. Thank you.
Thank you. Rowan, followed by Tracy Justin Cook.
Hi, Rowan, talking about 5G, Emily's ward. First off, I want to thank Councilor Clark for the suggestion on how to best approach eWeb about their leasing or not leasing their poles. Their board meeting has yet to happen since you offered your input. I took careful notes after we talked, and we'll see how that goes in March. Also, I'd like to thank City Manager Madere and her staff, Brian Soria, who gave me in-depth orientation on the application process that is controlled by the city. And I was very impressed by his experience of 18 years, I guess, in that area, and his comment that he'd never seen something so heavy-handed by the federal government, and also the intensity of the response back from the community, which was encouraging for me because sometimes I feel pretty alone in getting up here with a few other people. So I have more to learn. I did listen to the opening arguments in federal court for the case that the city is involved with, and I was impressed by the legal team that decision won't happen until later this year. So meantime, I'm looking for ways, I'm sort of upping my commitment to look for low-risk ways that either council or the board, the eWeb board, can slow down the process of switching on the towers, or better yet, permitting and constructing them. I understand 20 towers have been switched on out of the 42, if I understood correctly. I've started to have more nosebleeds and more ringing in my ears. And so this is a reminder to keep going for me. Also, a friend of mine told me that she lost 2 parents to cancer from a cell tower installation, not 5G. So
Thank you.
more later.
Thank you. Tracy Justin Cook, followed by Travis Johannes.
Hey, Tracy Justin Cook. I live around 12th and Madison, which is Ward 1, Simples. I got lots of ideas or solutions about what to do with the homeless, so I'll move quickly. If they go big enough, I got national ideas that could actually draw attention here to pay for your city hall. But just more practically, I made a video recently. It's gone kind of viral about the property at 1005 West 6th Avenue, which is right in betwixt 7-Eleven and Black Lotus Tattoo. So I cleaned up the trash there, and I got pricked by a needle, and I found a piece of a dashboard and also a license plate, and I heard stuff going on inside. It's all boarded up, really nice house, but boarded up. And my buddy Julian, who owns Black Lotus Tattoo, just built a fence. He's wasting his time, even though he's an awesome businessman and artist, building a fence to keep tweakers out because they're in there. It's a really nasty place. So what can be done about it? There's also a different example of the same thing, but going in a positive direction at about 747 Monroe across the alleyway from Sweet Life is another boarded up house, which actually looks nice. The people who are in there going through the gate, squatting in there, have it looking nice. They've been arranging the rocks and the gardening and everything. So my point is there are houses like this that could be bought up by somebody in New York or somebody in China or somebody who's not even caring about the property. They're just sitting on it, making our property values and rents go up and banking on the fact that they're going to be able to cash in on it later. One of the first 4 landmark cases of the U.S. Supreme Court will establish eminent domain. So if you guys had a process where you notify people, hey, you need to at least get the boards off your windows so we don't know there's not like tweakers doing crazy sex acts in there or whatever, then if they don't even reply to you within 3 months, yoink, you could yoink the property. But also in the interim, you could say, hey, this property is fair game, and as long as whoever's moving in there and squatting in it isn't upsetting the residents and the businesses around, well, then you kind of have a good situation. Sorry, I didn't have time to get to the other one. I'll send you guys emails following up in the video.
Thank you. Thank you. Travis Johannes, followed by Stefan Struck.
Hi, my name is Travis Johannes. I live over in Ward 7. As the work session on Bethel redevelopment on April 22nd approaches, I would like to ask that the Bethel Parks and Recreation projects be brought to the forefront. We commend the city for moving forward with the project to renovate Echo Hall Pool. I'm pretty excited about that. It was greatly outdated and undersized. I'm hoping to hear more about what the city has, what the city plans to move forward with the other recreation projects within Bethel. The Building a Better Bethel report came out in 2014, and it lists expanding recreation facilities as a key action item to be completed within 5 years of the release of that report. That's in another Bethel Park and Recreation Plan created in 2018, provided by the City of Eugene, key issues and needs were identified for parks and recreation improvement. I'd like to highlight some of these. So Peterson Barn Park is outdated and undersized for our community. It serves a neighborhood of over like 1,200 households, and so we'd want to expand capacity and programming for that. We need to increase the size and the space of the community center, as well as the availability of neighborhood parks. And some of Bethel is limited. There's 4 parks that need major renovations, and acquiring 2 to 3 additional parks for some of the underserved areas. An additional dog park and access for walking and biking to some parks and natural areas are needed, including some sidewalks and trail creation. Right now, Bethel does not have some special facilities found in other parts of Eugene, including a large community garden and spray play. And like a multi-use sports complex is kind of in high demand right now, as well as to restore and expand recreation access as appropriate to. Yeah, those 4 are good. That was the last one, not important.
Thank you. Thank you. Stefan Struck, followed by Cassandra Miley.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for bringing that up. I'm so glad that so many people are talking about projects for the Olympics in 2020 and 2021. My name is Stefan Strack. It's not Stefan Strack, it's Stefan. It's very simple. But the difference is just subjective. Anyways, I've got just a couple minutes. I wanted to just save everyone up front a lot of trouble by mentioning that City Hall, I honestly don't think the money's there anymore. Probably got spent, don't know where, but there's an empty parking lot on that side and another parking lot on that side, and no building materials anywhere. That 30 million, 15 million, I'd be surprised if there was $1 million anywhere. I think it's all gone. But moving forward, I think we can all be positive and get a new project going that'll make all that money back just before, any problems come up or anything like that. It's an excellent plan. It's an awesome plan. Everyone's gonna love it. It's a green and yellow brick road to Autzen Stadium. And I want it to start at the EMU. Go in a little spiral, and this way when all the tourists come, it'll be fun to point it out to them. They'll be like, how do we get to Autzen Stadium to take our Instagram pictures? Just point it out. Just follow the green and yellow brick road to get to Autzen Stadium. They'll be like, oh, where? No, it goes over the river and through the woods to get to Autzen Stadium. Yeah. And they'll be like, oh, that was great. Who thought that up? That makes a lot of sense. And that's what everyone's been telling me so far is, green and yellow brick road to Autzen Stadium just sounds like a great, awesome idea. I'm thinking solid green and solid yellow bricks, the whole way. Not painting red bricks. I think they'll last longer and it'll be a better investment. And, it'll be fun. Honestly, I think that it'll look great. This will bring all that money back, and that's what it's going to take to make Eugene ready for the Olympics and make Eugene great again. So you can go to my website, strksdks.com, and buy a sticker. Buy a sticker to support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
strksdks.com.
Got it.
Lovely.
Cassandra Miley, followed by Catherine Dunn.
Hi, Council. It's actually Cassandra Miller.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Not a problem. So as you guys are aware, LTD has their Transit Tomorrow program that they're trying to launch. On the 18th of on the 11th, I attended one of their public meetings at the Springfield City Hall, and I spoke to a gentleman who is on the board. I expressed to him some of the concerns that I have. I don't know what ward I'm in. I'm in the South Hills area, so I do apologize. I did mention about the 73 that goes from the U of O up to the top of Fox Hollow and Donald, and having that go and loop around the Butte to try to encourage more people to take public transportation up to the Butte as well as the Raptor Center. I did find on the eugene.gov page dated 2011 where it said that there was an estimated 300 people that visit the Butte every day, and the parking lot can kind of attest to that. When I went to the change.org website on the 18th, I did make this known to everybody that may go and sign the petition. Somebody unfortunately flagged my comment, and it was down for about a day. It did come back up the following day, but at that point, it came to my attention that the website, the PDF form on your guys' site has been removed. Luckily for us, Google has archived it, so it can still be seen that 300 people have visited back in 2011. I would like to know who is responsible for that, because this is not the first time that voices that are trying to come up with solutions for this program have been silenced. And it's very concerning that this is a city page that this is happening to. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Catherine Dunn, followed by Diane Bailing.
Catherine Dunn, Ward 5. I want to talk to you about the timeline this council has set out to make decisions about short-term rentals, or STRs. And in my mind, the timeline set out is needlessly rushed and unfair to the community. Based on the complexity and breadth of this issue, as well as to who it affects and how deeply it would affect some people. We need facts to make these decisions, and to my knowledge, we don't have local facts into the process yet. And if they are about to be provided, I think it's a little bit too late to get done when we said we wanted to get done by. In addition, we have the Olympic trials and the World Championships coming up next year. We've already got reservations in for both of those. And so it's not a great time to be discussing regulations. And we're behind in the process as it is. I also think that the rush timeline is causing some bad planning decisions. For example, the ad hoc committee held its first meeting, and before that meeting, they assigned one of the members to be the head of that committee, and that member was unfortunately a hotel professional, so it just was a conflict of interest and was not a good way to get started. And then we had the open house for the ad hoc committee, and there were definitely some of the committee members who couldn't attend, and the atrium building was not a great forum for that. You couldn't even hear anybody. You couldn't hear at the tables. We had to yell at each other to be heard. It was not conducive to having good communication. Now, the second ad hoc committee is coming up, and I understand the city has hired, I believe, a new person to take care of the leading of that committee, but it's like we're starting all over again. So just because the council wants to go on summer break is not a good enough reason to push this through. I think that we need these facts and enough time for all parties to understand what they need to understand before making regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Bailing, followed by David Ivan Piccioni.
Hello, my name is Diane, and I live in Ward 6. As a Bethel citizen, I recognize that I live in an area of Eugene that is underserved and under-resourced. Today, I want to focus on the inequities and dangerous health risks experienced within our community regarding environmental air quality. According to the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, 4 out of 5 of the county's biggest polluting facilities are located in West Eugene. These factories emit high particulate matter and hazardous air pollutants, which are considered highly dangerous to human health. In data collected by Beyond Toxics, West Eugene experienced over 500,000 pounds of toxic pollutant emissions in 2015, compared to just 247 pounds in all other zip codes in the city. In 2019, Bethel citizens reported higher instances of a number of health conditions higher than the rest of Eugene, including cancers, asthma, and respiratory illness. 30 to 50% of Bethel citizens have reported their health conditions worsening on days they smell or detect toxic odors. Not only does this increased exposure to pollution affect residents' health, but also their ability to enjoy outdoor recreation, physical activity, nature within their neighborhood, planting local food gardens, children's ability to focus, learn, and play, school work attendance due to illnesses associated with poor air quality. Around 20% of Bethel citizens reported missing school or work due to breathing difficulties. I'm urging the council to see this as a pressing public health concern and use their influence to advocate for stronger industrial regulation and policy for the industries in West Eugene. Thank you.
Thank you. David Ivan Piccioni, followed by Ed Farron.
Hi, I'm David Ivan Piccioni, and I have a blog. If you type in my name like she just said it and you put the word blog after, it'll take you there. I'm going to comment on 2 things that my friend Mike Clark said today. And people can live together. The rooms that we're building or that are being proposed to be built for people that don't have any alternative don't always have to be for one person. They can be for more than one person. And I was thinking, when I was in my second year in college, there was 5 other guys and me. And a person that had already gone through that experience with his friends said that we're all going to want to kill each other by the end of the year. And that did not happen. We had some good times and good experiences and learned some crucial things. But then I also remembered the story, by the play by Sartre called No Exit. These 3 people are in this room and they start getting antagonistic towards each other until the end, and then they realize where they are. They're in hell, and that's where they're going to be spending the whole time. So they better be nice to each other. About the other incident, what you mentioned about protesting and how it should be more, discreet. I think it depends on what you're protesting, because in that particular case that you were referring to, that was people that were really mad because we were getting kicked out of Occupy, and they did not go into the guy's property. And it was just 5 women that wrote something on their chest, opened their shirts, and you could read it. Ooh, how terrible! How scary! People were scared of that? Come on.
Thank you. Ed Farron, followed by Joshua Korn.
Hi, my name's Ed Farron. I live in Ward 6 of Bethel. And Bethel's one of the largest neighborhoods in the city. It's the largest, with 12,000 households. There's a high need to increase amenities within our neighborhood in order to serve citizens in their place of residence and reduce travel, to improve economic prosperity and cash flow within the neighborhood and create more walkable neighborhoods. Within the rest of Eugene, 40% of residents are within walking distance of a grocery store. In most areas of Bethel, only about 12 to 15% of residents are within a walking distance. Currently, residents need to travel for most amenities, including theaters, retail, and restaurant variety. Developing Highway 99 is a prime opportunity to add more of these amenities to the area and make it look good for the people who fly into Eugene and then go downtown for the Olympics. The Building a Better Bethel report done in 2014 includes 12 key action items to be completed within 5 years of the report, yet a number of these action items are left incomplete in 2020. A large portion of those action items focus on building business alliances, creating targeted business assistance, completing site pre-development, and retain and grow the food sector. I believe it is in the city's best interest to invest in business, entertainment, and amenity development in Bethel and champion amenity and business development opportunities to improve one of the most underserved areas in Eugene. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua Korn, followed by Linda Sisson.
Joshua Korn, South Eugene. Today I'm going to talk to you about wireless telecommunication facilities, small cell specifically, and regulation and deregulation. Back in September of 2018, the FCC filed this order, which is FCC 18-133, which sought to and temporarily did deregulate the ability for local control on small cell wireless telecommunication facilities, which relate specifically to 5G. This order was vacated in August of last year, 2019, with in DC Circuit of Appeals Court, August 9th, 2019, number 18-1129. And in this case, specifically, I'll quote a small amount from it. If petitioners prevail on any one or more of these grounds, we must vacate the order's deregulation of small cells and remand to the FCC. See, this sought to deregulate the FCC, and basically deregulate the control and allow these small cells to just be installed and applied for locally with no local control. But this was vacated. What that means is that NEPA now stands, because that was what forced local, that was what forced the process of having to get an environmental assessment and environmental impact statement done for every small cell application, which means that all small cell applications now are officially incomplete, and we'll continue next time.
Thank you. Linda Sisson? Great, thank you. And Linda will be followed by Violet Neal.
I'm Linda Sisson from Ward 2, and I'm an STR owner. I have been trying to find more information about how we got from where we were 6 years ago when I started doing STRs until how we got where we are with all of a sudden an ordinance that would put all of us out of business. And so I thought maybe there'd be some information in the Housing Tools and Strategies committee meeting. So I watched all 4 of them. And it was really very interesting. Lucy was there, and you know, they had the most fantastic facilitator. She had this whole consensus process that the group would go through, and she said the second meeting, I think, that everyone was wanting to go to actions right away, but if we jump right into the actions, then everyone's going to be fighting, so we have to go through the process. But anyway, that facilitator was really, really good. So the committee started with 50 to 60 possible actions that were developed by another housing group. A straw vote was taken during the second meeting, and the ground rules were going to be that items that had 70% or more of the support from the group would be the recommendations to the council. And then there'd be a second group with the 50 to 69% that were going to be sent alongside the recommendations, that these were things that more people agreed upon, but they weren't over 70%. And then there was the kind of reject pile of things that had less than 50%. So they were considered but weakly supported, and they were not said to be going to be sent to the council at all. And then the STR recommendation ended up getting 44% support. There was one person who voted against it, and everybody else said that they didn't have enough information to vote. So it was not true in the end that this was a recommendation from the committee to the council. It was not.
Thank you. Thank you. Violet Neal?
Hello, my name is Violet Neal. I live in Ward 1, and I'm a sophomore at Churchill High School. I'm also the policy director for Period Eugene. I'm here again today to discuss with you the menstrual hygiene rights of the city's citizens. I'm sure by now you are aware that we are a committed group of students and individuals from the city who care deeply about the menstrual inequity where we live. I'm also sure you are aware that we are not a group of individuals who are going to move past or ignore an issue like this one until it is resolved to the city's best ability. Menstrual hygiene products being available in the city's public restrooms have always been a need, and now is the time to think on the importance of this. Period products should be free, and that is a fact, regardless they are not, and we understand that is not something our world is ready for. We also understand that here, right now, our city can take a step in showing that we know menstrual hygiene product access is an issue, and it needs to be addressed and fought for. Putting products in the city's restrooms, even on a trial basis as you are now, will be the first step of many that will put you all on the right side of the movement and the right side of the issue, that is, supporting the menstruators of your ward and this city. We would like to thank you for listening to us after we first came and discussed this issue, and we would like you to know that although this is only a start, this gives us a hopeful outlook on what the future can hold. As I have stated in the past, it is well past the time of mistreating menstruators, especially poor and homeless menstruators, simply because they cannot afford to bleed. It is long past time for putting these issues on the back burner and waiting for change to happen. Menstruators come in all genders, and we need to start giving these citizens a feeling of equity and importance in this world by the small act of having a product available for an uncontrollable human function. This trial is a great start, and we hope you continue to listen and extend this work to this city who truly needs it. As Period Eugene, we urge you to listen to what we have said tonight and hope you feel the need and importance of putting thoughts and ideas into action and changing the lack of menstrual hygiene products in the city-owned public buildings and restrooms in town. I would like to leave you all with a reminder that urgent need requires urgent action. We hope you understand how much we care about the start of a trial like this, and we hope to see more work on this. This is the first step of many, and I hope you all know that we will continue to show up and be here to talk to you all about why this is important. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And that was our last speaker. Are there counselors? Counselor Pryor? Anybody else? Counselor Evans? Okay, take it away, Counselor Pryor.
Oh, thank you. I really want to appreciate everybody who came up and spoke tonight. With regard to the Bethel folks, I served on that Better Bethel committee, and a lot of what was fundamental to that was the partnerships that the city could form with other folks, and I think there's really some things we could do to work on those partnerships to make sure that those businesses and other organizations, including the chamber, are tuned in and can help to make that happen. So I think we want to be open about it, but we will want to make sure we work with those partners. I think that'll be a critical piece. But I agree with you, there's a lot that can be done there. Just a quick one on the protest. Yes, there were 5 topless women there. Also people who wanted to dress, who wanted to pitch tents, and someone who kicked that counselor's dog so badly it had to go to the veterinarian. So I think there was a little bit more there than that. With regard to the homeless shelter, you are dead on, absolutely right. In fact, what we are proposing to do is something called a navigation center, which has support services and counseling integral right in with the shelter. If you want to Google navigation center, it will tell you exactly what those are. The second thing with regard to City Hall, we are only bunking here. This is a temporary quarter for us. The county has made it clear this is not their intention to have us be here permanently. So we're looking at options. The last official communication we had with eWeb, they wanted $20 million for their building. That's the last thing they officially told us. If you or anyone else can come to us with a lower written proposal, I will absolutely love to look at that. But right now, they're saying $20 million before we even start with renovations. And so I think there's a lot of important stuff going on, and I really like you bringing up those points, and I think it's an opportunity for us to say, here's where we know where we are with those kinds of things. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Councilor Evans.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to thank our folks from Bethel, Ward 6 and Ward 7 for coming out and speaking tonight. We don't often hear from folks from Bethel, but I'm glad that we are now beginning to move forward and getting some critical mass to get behind some of the issues that you talked about. Particularly with regard to infrastructure. We have literally built new streets in Bethel without bike lanes. And the one that I will cite is Avalon Street. Avalon Street was not built for bikes. And a lot of the new development, the new homes that we have are in that area. In addition to that, yes, we have major environmental issues. There's a lot of smokestacks blowing a lot of smoke around our community, particularly around Roosevelt Avenue, and also moving further south into Ward 8. Those issues need to be addressed. We have a serious problem with our students in the Bethel School District, who many of them are homeless or inadequately housed, and it's real hard to do your homework on a cell phone. And my daughter has gone to school with, and still goes to school with a lot of those kids. Next one I had. I really appreciate the voter support for the last bond that has created or will create, a sports park in Golden Gardens, the improvements that we badly need for the Echo Hollow Pool. Those are all positive things going in the right direction, but we have other needs that have gone unaddressed for too many years, and now we find ourselves very much behind the 8 ball with regard to progress in the rest of the city. So I know you're going to keep coming. You're going to come out on April 22nd for that work session that focuses on Bethel, and I'm encouraging us to bring more folks out because the squeaky wheel does get the grease.
All right. Councilor Zelenka.
Confirm that. Squeaky wheel does get the grease, and that's what happens in City Hall. I wanted to address this mythology that UWeb is cheap or cheaper than building a new City Hall. It is simply not true. It's incorrect. There has only been one study done that actually looked at this in any detail. It was Robertson Sherwood Architects did it for the city. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars on it. They had 3 different very reputable firms do the mechanical and electrical, structural, and condition assessment. And it was 136 pages long. It's on our website. You can go look at it. And in that, and see, people seem to be making up stuff in the absence of information. Well, here's some real information about what the cost estimates were. As Councilor Pryor said, I think the number is actually like $22 or $23 million just to buy the property, which is almost as much as the new City Hall would cost. And then it is not move-in ready. This is a 1988 building. It's 40 years old. It needs interior demolition and remodeling, ADA upgrades, HVAC needs an updating, lighting, internal and external needs to be done, exterior building envelope, windows, ceiling, panels, seismic upgrades, energy efficiency. The energy efficiency of that building, there's a thing called Energy Use Index, EUI. And the goal for the new city hall is like 30. This building's at 155. Lower's better. The code says 55, so it's not even even close to code because it's an old building. And what's achievable is 45. So you can get, even after spending millions of dollars, you're not even going to get close to a new city hall's sustainability and energy efficiency. The plumbing and fire sprinkler systems, the elevators, there's just so much about that 40-year-old building that needs to be redone. It is not move-in ready. That is just a mythology. And so all of that adds up to several $100s per square foot. In total, what the study showed was that it cost to build out the whole building, which is actually 3 times more than we actually need, is $48.7 million. It's not free, it's not cheap, it's actually almost twice the cost of a new city hall. So it's on the website, go look up the report and read it and see if you can poke holes in it. Be glad to, but I think the people that did it, Robertson Sherwood Architects, are very credible, and the 3 firms they use, KPFF, Hobach Lewin, and Systems West Engineering, are all incredibly well informed and credible firms that did this 136-page report. So I don't buy it when people say it's cheaper. It just isn't. It's just not true. There's no study that shows the alternative.
Okay. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that Councilor Evans is a good advocate for you. He has been talking for quite a long time about the disparity of build-out that's occurred in Ward 6 in the Bethel area. I just want you to know that I, too, am in support of addressing a lot of the infrastructure issues you mentioned, because I think Bethel area has gotten the short end of the stick for too long a period of time on that, and it's time we did something about it. To my friend, Councilor Pryor, I would say, while working in the real estate arena, oftentimes when an offer is made, the appropriate thing is for the other party to make a counteroffer. So if you're suggesting that we make a counteroffer, I'll be happy to write that up and make that motion, brother. And I think the number should be 16 to 18, somewhere in that general vicinity. And to the mythology that Alan keeps perpetrating, I would suggest that anybody that wants to poke holes in what he's just gone on about again can start with the number of years old that study he mentioned is. And I'm not exactly sure whether it's 6 or whether it's 8, but it was certainly under Roger
4
rather than Frank.
26.
And one of the things that you notice when you do that is that there's an entirely different administration in that building than there is today. Roger ran a different ship, and he wasn't suggesting that the property should be surplused as it is now. And at the time, the entire staff working there wasn't interested in any way in giving up that building, and he relied on the staff to get a lot of that information. And there's several things listed in the things that were just mentioned that are no longer true and no longer in need of being done, not to mention the fact that our utility is one of the greenest on the entire West Coast, and the difference in energy efficiency is so minor as to be ridiculous in terms of the cost. But even, and yeah, I appreciate it if, we all respected one another a little bit, because I sat here quietly while he was doing that too. But let's just give him credit for being right. Let's say he's absolutely right. And it cost $48 million, plus $20 million to buy it, which is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. But even then, that's $68 million for 100,000 square feet. That is $680 a square foot. What we're going to build across the road is going to end up being $40 million for 30,000 square feet. That's $1,300 a square foot. So even if he's right, it still cost twice as much. And we will have to continue to pay $1.5 million a year in rent for the outside space that we're renting, that we are not using in the 100,000 square feet they have on the river. So let's not pretend this is a clear, cut and dry issue.
Okay, we do have a consent item. I just want to ask one other question. We had testimony about some kind of petition on the website that wasn't working. Do you get notes about that? That wasn't entirely clear to me.
Well, I
but-
think what I understood from that note was that apparently there was a document that was there and then was gone. And so I'll follow up on that, and I'll have staff relook at this. There was a couple of things we'll follow up on.
Okay, super. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, that closes the public forum. Thank you all very much for testifying. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues have said on the council, and appreciate you all coming. We have one more item on our agenda, which is consent calendar 2. Adoption of a resolution annexing land to the city of Eugene, Assessor's Map 17042313, Tax Lot 7400, located at 1345 LK Drive, City File Finnerty, Catherine A. 1911. Do we need any discussion? This was pulled from the earlier
No,
consent
this
calendar?
is just your new format. So
Right.
what you had talked about is, hey, we don't want to have land use planning type things on the consent anymore, just in case there is some controversy and in case somebody comes to the public forum. In this case, nobody came to the public forum. We've actually received no comment on this, so I don't see any need to talk about it.
Perfect. I just didn't know. All right.
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar 2.
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it passes, none opposed, and we are adjourned.